good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live after a bit of a tech fail last week. I'm joined tonight by Mackay and Nikki. How you going, guys?
Very good, thank you.
Not too bad.
Yeah, Pete sends his apologies. He's away interstate at the moment and tied up some other things, so we will just soldier on without him. But there's a bit going on at the moment to talk about. So without any further ado, Nick, I reckon we'll just throw straight into Nikki's news.
Well, there was some Adelaide news. I think we'll leave that to the end, and we're going to start with the AFL once again deciding they really want this Cockwombly Numbnut of the Year award. What is it, since the end of the season, pretty much they've kind of almost won every nomination so far. So they're doing really well. So first off, we had Job Watson being the good bloke, and he finally decided, and it was really hard. It was so hard to part with it, and he finally gave back the Brownlow.
Doesn't it make you want to puke? You
should have done it as soon as you were found guilty. Actually, the AFL should have stepped in immediately and removed it from you as soon as you were found guilty. But no, they had to engineer something once again, so he was still the good bloke.
Well, the word is that he was told to bring it back because he was going to be stripped of it, and it would look better for him.
Yeah, you stole my line there. He wasn't a good bloke handing it back. It's exactly what you just said then, Phoenix. He had the choice of looking like a bit of a turd, or he had a choice of making a good guy of himself, and that's what the AFL, they always negotiate a result. You know, it's not like maybe perhaps the right result, but it's a negotiated result.
But it's hilarious that it took that long to do so after the findings came back, that it's taken that long. It was just ridiculous. I mean, they're really crap negotiators.
Yeah, but it may have taken that long to convince him to hand it in.
Well, what made me sick as well was the announcement of Cochin and Mitchell's, almost posthumous Brownlow medal win. And the praise that they heaped on Watson and basically saying he's enhanced the award by upholding the spirit of best and fairest and giving it back. So we've got the league saying that a convicted drug cheat has enhanced the Brownlow medal. I mean, can you actually believe it?
Yes, yeah.
From them I can, yes. But not from anybody else I couldn't, no.
It's unbelievable. Like, no other sport on the planet, particularly a sport subject to the wider code, would ever utter such a phrase to say that that's like saying Lance Armstrong did the Tour de France a favour by, giving back his yellow jerseys or whatever. It's just absolutely ludicrous. I couldn't believe reading that.
Well, an interesting thing too, of course, is the fact that they're going to award the medals to Mitchell and to Cochin, and other sports, many other sports, and I think cycling didn't declare any winners for the Lance, what's his name, business, did they?
No, there's good reason for that though, Macca.
Yeah, because they were all on it.
Yeah, they were pretty sure that whoever came second, third, fourth, fifth, most of them probably had dope. So in terms of the optics and that thing, it was like, we won't award it. But when it happens at the Olympics, so case in point, where recently all those Russian athletes that have all their medals have been struck out, they've immediately given them to the ones who have come next. And to me, the Brownlow is exactly the same situation as that. Anybody who tries to bring up the Franklin stuff in cycling, it's like, no, that's its own kettle of fish regarding drug taking.
Yeah, but Nikki, another interesting point was that one of the journalists, I don't know if it's the Age or the Herald Sun, went through all the matches that Essendon played in and took out the Essendon best players out of the Brownlow medal, which would have left Cochin standing at the top of the tree as the winner of the Brownlow medal. And the logic behind that is that those guys were also suspended, so their vote shouldn't count either.
No, but I think people
they got that wrong.
Because if you
take out all the Essendon games, then Thompson is the medalist.
They didn't take out the Essendon games. They took out the Essendon votes.
The players.
They took out the
Which
votes.
is kind of unfair because you're playing against players who actually shouldn't have been playing at all.
Yeah, it's flawed logic. PJ Crows, just for your benefit, there were two schools of thought. There was take out all the Essendon games and then Scotty Thompson would have been the winner. Or if you take out the Essendon votes in every game that they played and replace them with the next best opposition vote getter, which they did for the Herald Sun and they just used their own best players as a guide, then Cochin was the outright winner. But I think people are just overthinking. It's a simple matter of a player became ineligible, and as has been the case for every other year when a player has been ineligible, the highest vote getter who is eligible wins the medal. So let's not complicate things. Mitchell and Cochin get the medal. Yes, it's a contrived situation, but they deserved winners, and I think it should be left at that.
Look, what you said makes good logic with one exception, and that is the fact is that the votes still contain those of other players that should have been suspended.
But it does anyway, Mackay. A bloke gets suspended in round one, he can still get votes for the rest of the year.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Yeah. Okay.
It's a simple case of it's a suspended player, so he's not eligible. So the Brownlow goes to the top vote getting eligible players, which happen to be Mitchell and Cochin in this case. End of story, really.
Actually, I hate that because I think you won that argument.
Yeah. People listening are probably used to that by now, Mackay.
Oh, come on. Some of the crap that you claimed as victory in the past, though, Felix.
As long as it's a victory in my own mind, mate, then I don't really care.
That's how it works. It definitely works. You've got the button and I haven't.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I made Pete start breaking up. I might make you start breaking up in a minute and drop you out as well.
He couldn't even get it out.
No, he couldn't get a word out edgewise. That was pure coincidence, though, but it was funny. What else you got for us, Nick?
Well, in other contrived news, the AFL, so today they've announced that the Whitfield affair, they've come to a agreement regarding a punishment, which is essentially Whitfield's only going to miss 8 weeks of football. So it's 6 months, but it's really only 8 weeks. And Allen and Lambert have a 12-month suspension. Now, the strong rumour is that all three of them were told you must accept this form of punishment, otherwise it would go back to ASADA, and it's a 4-year ban.
That's correct, Nikki. And of course now that brings into play the question, does GWS as a club get a punishment as happened in the past to other clubs, Essendon, Adelaide, Carlton, etc. Now, I can't see how they can't. GWS are saying that they will fight and protest any attempt to strip them of draft picks because they're saying that the employees were acting off their own bat and it wasn't club policy what they did. But having said that, one was the general manager of football and the other one was the manager of player welfare, and they deliberately flouted the rules and were acting on behalf of the club at the time that they did it. And GWS cannot argue any other way than that. And if you just want an analogy to that, just look straight at the Tippett affair. I mean, there was employees that did that, and that wasn't club policy to do that, but they did it, and when they did it, they were acting on behalf of the club, and therefore the club gets penalised. So I know GWS is their own baby, and they'd hate to hurt it, but I can't see how they can't.
Well, the thing is, they've still got pick number 2, because even if they take away their first and second round draft picks, it's 15 and 37 from memory. They've traded in for pick 2, so that would actually still be safe. So they still have that. Their issue is, and why they're fighting it, is that they've got a number of academy kids that are first round, and they do not have the currency now if they lose those 2 draft picks. They would have to bank future ones against it, and they don't want to do that. So they're trying to get all these extra kids in. I actually think even if they're threatening all this stuff, the other clubs are going to go, no, you can lose those too, because it means those other clubs will have access to those kids when normally they wouldn't do.
I agree with you. What do you think, Phoenix?
Well, I've got a couple of issues around this, but on the topic that we're discussing at the moment, on what basis should GWS get draft picks? Not that I'm disputing it. I just want to know what on
bringing
what
the game
basis?
into disrepute, because that's what they charged Lambert and Allen and Whitfield with. They weren't charged under the drug code.
And Adelaide.
Yeah. But that's what they've done in this instance. Is it's under the bringing the game into disrepute.
To me, that opens up a whole can of worms. And the reason is that my impression was that the issue that Whitfield had that Allen and Lambert were trying to shield him from was an illicit drug issue rather than a performance-enhancing drug issue.
Correct, yeah.
And in and of itself, if they'd allowed him to be tested, he would have, if he was positive, he would have got a strike under the illicit drugs code. So the first assumption to make is that he must be on 2 strikes, because otherwise you just cop the hit, or you would self-report. So
or there was the fear that it was he took something and there might have been one of
like
the actual
boys.
Legal drugs. Yeah, like the Collingwood boys.
Yeah.
That's the other argument people put up about it.
But the second point is, from my perspective, is that my understanding is that once you dodge an ASADA drug test, it automatically is as bad as failing a test.
You're right.
It is.
That's a very good point.
So that's my understanding of the official rule. Basically, if you dodge a test, you're basically deemed to have tested positive.
Yep.
So from my perspective, for the life of me, I can't understand why Whitfield gets 6 months on that basis. I know he did a plea bargain or a plea deal or whatever, but 6 months. I mean, the maximum penalty now is 4 years under the WADA code.
No, that's the minimum.
4 years is yes.
Yeah, minimum. Yeah.
Minimum, yep. And notwithstanding the fact that we may have been dealing with an illicit drug issue, the fact that he dodged the test makes it a performance-enhancing drug issue for the purposes of the penalty. Why did they let him bargain from 4 years down to 6 months?
Well, that's the thing is, I bet you he didn't bargain. This is the AFL's doing because they don't want him to be found guilty of that 4 years.
Yeah, and Nikki's right. It's the AFL that's initiated all this, and they've pushed it through like greased lightning to try and stop it going to... And ASADA virtually said they will turn a blind eye to it, because the minute ASADA looks at it, WADA comes into it, and it will be 4 years.
But no, that's not necessarily the case, because Ryan Crowley and Ahmed Saad, wasn't it? Not Saad. Was it Saad?
Yeah, it was Saad.
Yep. They both copped 12 months ban under the ASADA code, and WADA didn't come in over the top of that. ASADA deemed it appropriate, and, away we went. So where's the consistency, given that Whitfield's offence is equivalent, basically, to Crowley and Saad? Why is it only 6 months? Why isn't it at least 12 months? And given that 12 months was half the sentence back then, why isn't it 2 years?
Because they've... they can't do... So Saad and Crowley were under the WADA code as enforced by ASADA. Positive test. That one had the 2-year penalty. The new penalty now, which has come into effect from when Whitfield did this, it's the new penalty, so it's 4 years is the minimum instead of the 2, which is what it was previously.
That's
so
right. So why isn't it the same?
Because they haven't charged him under the drug code. What they've done is charged him under bringing the game into disrepute. Now, the information that was leaked, that came out, that people had access to originally, and that's what we know kind of happened, that story has changed in the official evidence that's been presented by the AFL. So it's not as clear-cut. They're now trying to deny it was anything to do with an illicit drug, and they're just digging the hole even deeper. The story's just gotten quite ridiculous. It's so obvious that the AFL has once again managed this for it to be this way.
Well, there's no doubt you can tell it's got the AFL written all over it that they're trying to cover it up. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is that they own GWS. And also they don't want to have another Essendon on their hand. But do you really think if it was Adelaide, if it was an Adelaide player and Adelaide officials had done that they would have acted in the same manner, Nicky, in Phoenix?
Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah,
My
not at all.
argument is, though, Nick, that if it was a straight illicit drug use issue, then it comes under the AFL banner because it's the AFL's illicit drug use policy. But dodging a test automatically comes under the ASADA umbrella. It doesn't matter what the test might have showed. And this is what I don't understand. I don't understand how the AFL have been able to cut a deal on this, and I don't understand why ASADA, because to my understanding is if a player dodges a test, then ASADA reports it to the AFL, and then the AFL deal with it under their drug code, which has to be ASADA compliant. I don't understand the process here because I can't see how a 6-month penalty can be ASADA compliant.
No, and
it's not.
But
Which is why it's bringing the game into disrepute.
But for some reason or other, and whether it was reported in the paper, it said that ASADA was content to leave the AFL to deal with the matter.
Yeah, it's just flying by the seat of your pants, and this administration is going from bad to worse. And there was a good little discussion on the boards today about, at what stage do the natives get restless? I posted that myself, but a few people have rightly pointed out, well, the AFL have got it sewn up because they own the clubs, they prop up the clubs, so the clubs aren't going to arc up because they rely on the AFL for their income. So you're talking about a bunch of compliant tenants who are basically just beholden on a corrupt AFL system that's essentially self-serving. But it's the most lopsided, corrupt, inconsistent competition, I reckon, in the world.
They make the NFL look really professional.
Well, as far as I'm aware, the NFL are working towards wider compliance too, Nick.
Yeah, which is what I find really interesting because drug use there is rife. You only have to look at the size of those players.
But how can you actually take a competition like the AFL seriously? And how do people who pay hard-earned to go and see these clubs continue to show support when the system is so arbitrary and it's all designed, as you said, Mackay, earlier on, just to manipulate outcomes?
Yeah, it is, and I'm so you are on fire, and I'm having trouble folding you tonight. It's a pity you're not like this every week,
mate. I've been reading legislation for the last 2 weeks, so I'm all up on the wordy stuff tonight.
No, you do very well. No, you're 100% right. It's just a fly by the seat of your pants administration and the manner in which decisions come down. It's an absolute joke.
But where's the accountability, though, Mackay? That's the issue. There's no real checks and balances because the AFL themselves don't have to really. I mean, the only time that they were forced into action with Essendon was when the threat of funding was put in front of them by the government because it was such a big issue. But under normal circumstances, the AFL, there's no accountability. Mike Fitzpatrick's been that commissioner for 150 years and probably will be for another 150. I can't remember the last time they had an election. Who knows how that whole process operates. And Gill's shown himself just to be a carbon copy of Andy Demetrio, but without the flair.
Yeah, well,
Demetrio, as much as we hated him, and he did a lot to ruin the game and a few other things, he was actually competent at a few things. Gillen's not competent at anything.
The trouble with Andy D was that he is actually the one who's really accelerated this whole managing outcomes situation. I mean, you didn't have that situation. Even under Oakley, you didn't really have that situation. You certainly didn't have it under Jackson. But since Demetrio's
and that's why Jackson got the arse.
Well, eventually. He'd served his purpose. He'd righted the ship and all that sort of stuff. And Demetrio then has brought in his own style of management, which is essentially being get the outcome you want any way you can get it, instead of making a bunch of rules and sticking by them.
Yeah, but the difference is Andy Dimitro, he used to, virtually be singing the song, I did it my way, but also on top of this saying, and you'll do it my way or I'll kill you. Whereas Gillen wants to be Mr. Nice Guy in the process.
And he's not clever enough for that.
Well, witness, the Essendon situation, for example, with the Brownlow medal, well, that particular farce. He's trying to make a nice thing out of it, whereas Demetrio, at least he always managed to, managed to look a bit like an arsehole in the whole thing.
The thing with the whole commentary on Watson from the AFL, though, is that I don't know whether they've actually read the tea leaves appropriately, because apart from Essendon supporters and even not all Essendon supporters, everyone else associated with other AFL clubs, almost without exception, think that he's a drug cheat. So why the AFL are continuing to toe this line of almost victim mentality in regards to Essendon and those players is beyond me. They're certainly not doing it to garner grassroots support, because they won't get any. We all disagree with what they're saying.
If you actually talk to anybody involved with any of the other clubs, and they will not say this publicly, they will not say this around the media or whatever, they are incredibly scathing of Essendon and what it's done to the competition. So there's an awful lot of hatred, but of course they can't say that they're not going to come out and do it, because it's the AFL's pushing, this is the story we're going with, and you all have to follow.
My theory about why the AFL are taking this line of commentary is the same theory that sort of said that the AFL were complicit in the first place. I think the AFL are incredibly afraid of opening up a can of worms that they themselves would be complicit in. And that's why they trod so softly with the whole Essendon affair. That's why it took so long to resolve. And that's why
they wanted it to go away.
Yeah, and that's why even now they're very conciliatory in their tone. They've allowed Essendon to have the number one pick when really they shouldn't have. You know, and they continue to paint the players as victims. And to me, that's nothing short of trying to put something to bed without ruffling feathers. Because you could imagine there'd be a few people in Bomberland who might know a few things that could throw the AFL under the bus pretty quick smart if they were given any sort of audience or reason to do so.
And that attitude towards the players also ignores the fact that the players lied continuously and saying that they had not taken any other stimulants or drugs of any type when they knew that they had been. So while the players' complete ignorance may be on what they actually got, they cannot deny the fact that they were involved in a sneaky process of taking something and then lying about it. And once you're lying, it doesn't matter what you say after that, you're guilty.
Well, those things are those questionnaires. Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong, but those questionnaires that they fill out when they get tested, they're like essentially statutory declarations, aren't they?
They're a
stat. They're a stat there.
Yeah. So essentially, you're absolutely right, Mackay. And this is a game where those sorts of details are ignored. In the rush of the AFL to try and get everything resolved and swept under the carpet with as little damage as possible.
The problem is how many supporters, every time Essendon play, the opposition's going to boo.
Well, you know what the commentary is going to be from the AFL. People shouldn't be booing, just like they did with Adam Goods. But this is where I think they're going to come at odds with themselves because they haven't read the tea leaves of the general public, because nobody, apart from Essendon and the AFL's official line, thinks that Essendon are victims. So everyone's going to boo the hell out of them every time they play this year. Simple as that.
Yep.
Just in summary, coming back to the Whitfield thing, let's have a little statement on what we think the AFL will do, whether they will actually take draft picks away from GWS or not. I mean, they should, if they're consistent. I'm going to say they won't.
I think they're going to need some of the clubs to actually come out and start publicly talking about it. and I would suggest that a couple of the Victorian clubs might do so. Be interesting what's going to come out in the news tomorrow, if any of them do. And you can bet your boots that the Melbourne journalists would be calling particular club presidents for comments. And that actually may force their hand a little bit, because the clubs, I think, have a bit of power in this case regarding the draft picks. And the fact that these other clubs can probably sniff a little bit of blood in the water regarding GWS.
Yeah, but on the other side of the coin, Nikki, is the fact that the draft is only, 10 days away?
Yeah.
And so if they say we're going to take 2 draft picks off you, first and second round, and be at the numbers that you quoted previously, GWS, if they are going to take a stand against it, might take court action to halt that particular procedure, which might then just ruin the whole draft.
I don't think they would, though.
Oh, I do.
Because you reckon they would?
Hell yeah. Look, I reckon they're going to call the other clubs bluffs, because, it's quite all right throwing stones if your own backyard's in order. And I think there's a few clubs whose backyards probably aren't in order enough to be open to scrutiny. And I don't think you'll find that much support for GWS losing picks, even though the clubs have a vested interest in knocking GWS out of the first round. I don't think there'll be that much support for it. No, I'd be very surprised if they lost both their first round. They may lose one, or they might lose one pick.
They might lose the second, two. They might lose the first because they've got 2. They've got pick 2.
Maybe.
So you can say, we'll take away their first round draft pick.
Look, they should lose a first and second round, and if that's consistent, I'm going to say they'll lose nothing, because because the AFL won't want to ruffle GWS's feathers in case they take it to a court action and mess up the whole draft, and also it also opens up great big arguments and debates, and you're going through a mini Essendon, and they don't want that. They just want it to go away now that they've done something about it. So I would say they won't do it.
And this comes back to the point you made earlier, Mackay. They're casting a rod for their own back, the AFL, because of these inconsistencies. And GWS would be within their rights to seek an injunction on the back of inconsistencies and what have you. And because of the different ways the AFL have dealt with each situation as it comes up, there's no precedent set there. So GWS can say, well, you just keep shifting the goalposts.
Yep. They do, but they unfortunately the league does keep moving the goalposts.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And just another little point regarding the Whitfield thing, they did try to have that dire a death. They knew about this in the middle of the year. The story actually broke in the middle of the year, and then it got hushed up, and it was quiet for a very long time, and then it surfaced again with the media finally going, no, we're going to report on it. So
yes, some journalists
that was very like Essendon.
And let's not forget too that, and again I find this abhorrent, but Gubby Allen and GWS were very quick to throw that girl under the bus.
Yes.
By characterising her as a drama queen and a quote-unquote troublesome ex-girlfriend who was...
Yep.
And they painted her in the picture of causing trouble and trying to, cause trouble for Whitfield. At some stage, someone is not going to put up with that sort of stuff. That girl has every right to seek action against those people for bringing her name, her character into question, because all she did was report something to the club, and as it turns out, with good cause.
And she only escalated it to a starter because the club tried to brush her off. She obviously had serious reservations about this. She was really concerned. She was concerned for him. She wasn't doing it to... If you're looking at the information that's been provided, if you're thinking about it logically, she's not doing that to be vindictive. She's doing that to try and help somebody.
But the thing of it is, Nikki, at the end of the day, her motivations are irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
And the club and Alan painting her in such a light was a clear attempt at deflection, when really what they should have done was taken the allegation at face value, dealt with it within the rules, and copped any punishment that was coming their way. And the fact that Gubby Allen and Collingwood were able to manufacture a move for Allen to Collingwood underlines the fact that they thought they got away with it. There's no way Collingwood would have employed Allen if they knew that they were going to be without a GM football, for 12 months. No way in the world.
Yeah, and he lost his job now.
Now the discussion is he won't be welcome. He possibly actually won't be welcome back after the 12 months is up.
No, he's resigned. He has resigned.
Oh, he has officially resigned.
Yep, he had to resign. He not only walked out there out of the club today, he also handed his resignation at the same time.
Another case of optics of we'll let you resign for the good of your career when essentially we've just sacked you.
Something like that.
Yeah, maybe. But think of the position that it puts Collingwood in. I mean, they're without a general manager of football now. Allen was brought in as a change agent. He was very much there to oversee maybe Buckley's demise, but certainly some changes with regards to the way things were operating at the football department level there. They've got no one. As far as I'm aware, the only person who's willingly putting up their hand at the moment from outside the club is Michael Christian. And aside from that, they've just got some bloke underneath who's learning the ropes but hasn't got the experience. We better watch out. They might try and poach Brett Burton soon.
I was going to say that's a very appropriate moment to probably move across
I was trying to think
Brett Burton.
There was a little lead-in going on here. In terms of optics, kudos to our club for dropping the news regarding Shaw and Burton on the day of the US election happening.
Yeah,
so nobody actually really cared about it. That was brilliantly done. Well done.
Well, we haven't seen that since the Trigg days, and that's a bit of a worry.
I think it was probably planned to kind of happen there, but I think it would have been... I don't think they would have thought that Trump was actually going to win. Because all of that media stuff would be put in place beforehand.
Yeah, but Adelaide really got into a bit of a pickle in this whole situation because Vosso was going to be the man that was going to take over the role, or so Adelaide thought, because they were having conversations with him, but then he declined. And then, of course, what's the chap's name, the other bloke?
Sumich,
yeah. Then they thought they'd be able to lure Sumich across. But when they came up empty, there really wasn't anybody else left around.
Well, by the look of it, they had a couple of good candidates. But to me, what this actually shows is how hard it is to actually attract people in those kind of positions away from their home states. Because often when you're getting to that particular position, you often have a family for a lot of them as well, and you've got kids that are going through school. To uproot them is a bit of a difficulty if you've kind of got a similar position lined up already back in your home state.
Yeah, it'd have to be a massive offer to make you move, and Adelaide aren't going to pay something really out of the ordinary. It really is, unfortunately, Collingwood, of course, the billionaires club, they must have been offering Gubby Allen a big hunk of money, but
he has ties to that club as well.
They can't, though, Mackay, because they've got the luxury tax. So unless they're prepared to pay luxury tax, they can't offer massive coin.
Yeah, no, they've been paying they've been paying quite a substantial amount of tax, but they have been trying to cut it back, but they were well over.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that they wouldn't want to be paying much more. I don't buy the fact that they had two headhunted candidates, if you like, in Sumich and Vosso, and that was it. Then they had to look internally. There's football clubs all over Australia at various levels. There's plenty of good operators in the SANFL, for that matter, who have been part of SANFL club administration for a long time, overseen coaches, had involvement in the game, etc., etc. I just don't understand how they can justify putting a bloke in after 1 year at the club who openly admits that he actually is very light on for experience in a lot of the key areas.
Yeah, look, as a person that in my life I've probably employed maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people in my life, and he certainly doesn't meet the criterion that I would be looking for if I was going to fill that position. But having said that, that doesn't mean that they know a lot more about him than I do. There's always two things I always look for in an individual, and one was the fact that they were hardworking, and I think he's proven that he's got that particular asset. The second one was that they had intelligence, because if people are hardworking and got intelligence, they can learn anything and they can do anything, and maybe Burton is that man.
He might have those attributes, Mackay. But if you look at the role as it stands, and we can only look at the role as it was when Nova was in charge, and granted, the role will probably change somewhat. But let's assume...
They have said it will.
Yeah, but let's assume for the sake of the argument that one of the core, tasks as GM football is overseeing the coaching staff. Now, to me, it doesn't matter how smart you are or how hard-working you are. If you're going to be an effective operations manager, football department operations manager, you need to have some sort of experience and leverage when it comes to managing coaching staff. Otherwise, you're nothing but a glorified coach's assistant. And that's my fear with Burton, that it'll be the tail wagging the dog. It'll be the coaching department wagging the general manager of football operations, because Bird just simply won't have the credibility and the background and experience to be able to make hard calls on coaches.
Yeah, well, Birdman...
I agree with you on that.
And it's a very real danger, what you just said. If the Birdman's got any brains whatsoever, and I believe he has, he will have to rely on Justin Reid, who I haven't got a great opinion of so far, but he'll also have to... Also, Hamish Ogilvie will be his man in the draft period. In other words, he shouldn't really be listening at all to what the coach has said, other than perhaps the coach may say, I have a real need for such and such. And I think he will be saying that. He'll be saying, I have a need for midfielders, be they inside or outside, and obviously we do need a couple of outsiders. But apart from that department should be making its own decisions as far as the draft is concerned. And hopefully the Birdman will do that. If he listens to the coach, then he's in trouble, because we go back to Gary Ayres' days. You see what happened when Adelaide's drafting was dictated largely by the coach, which was Gary Ayres, and boy, did we pull some pisses back then.
Well, we're the ones that got Carey instead of bloody Pav.
I do think, though, that Pike is a slightly different beast from Ayres, very much so. And Ogilvie, and as a contrast to Burton, very much has the runs on the board. He is seen within the industry as pretty much the top recruiter.
He's the man. He's good.
He is the man. So I would say in this instance, we're perfectly fine that it will be the decisions of what we've had done previously is that decision is made by Ogilvie. The coach has a say towards it, but the final call was always with Ogilvie.
Well, my concern isn't about the draft, because they've clearly said that they have a plan, and they've done their pre-draft meeting, and they'll do another one. I think it's 2 or 3 days before the draft to settle on their final order, and the coach has the input, and various people have input, but ultimately it's Ogilvie who's the talent spotter. My concern with regards to Burton and managing the coaching staff is ongoing performance management. We've got a couple of guys who are long-term coaches, Camporelli and Matty Clark, and is someone like Brett Burton going to have the kahunas and the credibility to be able to make a hard call on people like that. Ryan O'Keefe's another one.
Considering that he played with Clark.
And my concern, again, and look, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that Rue's come in and made some changes at the club, and it, in many respects has changed the culture of the club, or is in the process of doing so. But I also have a fair idea of what Rue is probably like, relatively autocratic. And the danger is that Burton becomes a bit of a puppet for Mark Rasciuto on the board. And that's not good news for our footy club. We need people that are independent thinkers, that are allowed to make decisions independently based on their own positions. And again, I don't want Rue running the club at a football operations level via Brett Burton.
No, that is a danger.
Yeah.
Because Rue is, he's very much larger than life, isn't he? And very dominant. So what you're saying, it probably will apply to some degree, whether we like it or not. I think Rue is the man that has the say football-wise. But one thing I did like that Burton said in his interview, not with perhaps a lot of panache, but he said, "I can be a prick." So I thought I did like. I liked the message. He could have delivered it better.
Well, sometimes sometimes you just need that plain speaking. For me, I think Phoenix, as I've just said to Damp Squid on the chat, I think you've explained quite well what a lot of our reservations are. I'm willing to take a bit of a wait and see, though, because you can't really know. And not everybody went into those positions with the experience. Every one of them had to start out going into those type of positions at some stage, somebody taking a chance on them. So I'm willing to take a little bit of wait and see, but like you, I do have some reservations.
Yeah, Nikki, that is the correct approach to take.
Yeah, I
because I do know from what you said is quite right. Even the greatest drafter, the greatest football manager, the greatest whatever they're called, they started off somewhere and they had to be a novice at some stage. And there's no doubt that the greatest appointments I ever made were young people that I gave a go to, who I thought could do the job because they had the drive and they had brains. And let's hope that the Birdman is one of those. Our other appointment, Justin Reid, for whatever reason it might be, and maybe always out of his control, certainly didn't cover himself with glory during the draft period. Mind you, he did have that mighty Phil Harper as backup during that period. What the hell is that guy still doing at our club?
Well, I was actually just going to mention that, Mackay, because when you talk about employing someone on potential, and I do agree, I've employed people as well, and there are times where you think there's a guy there or a person there, I should say, that is just right to do the job and will tackle it, despite having no experience. But usually there's experienced people around them. Burton doesn't have a lot of experienced football administrators around him, and Harper's a classic example where he's been at the club for 100 years, hasn't really progressed. Rose for a little while, and then was, the outward perception anyway was that he got shunted sideways or pushed aside for Noble to come through, and Noble was far more competent. So you wonder who Burton's actually going to be able to gain experience from in the club, because even Andrew Fagan, as good as he might be as a CEO, he's 2 years into AFL football, having come from a different sport. So, whilst he'll probably get some management experience and guidance from Fags, Fags has never managed a coach as far as I'm aware. So, I agree with you, Nikki, it is a bit of a wait and see, but there's some worrying signs coming from the club that we're just slipping back into a few old traits. And, this off-season, the club hasn't really covered itself in glory to any great degree.
Oh, no, I'd say you can only call it as it is, and so far you'd have to say the off-season's been a shitter. To quote in Brett Burton language, it's been an absolute shitter.
Well, bring on Monday when they come back to training.
Yeah, that's right. So it's first to 4-year players on Monday, isn't it?
Yep, and the girls.
And the girls, that's right. That's straight into pre-season. When's the season start for the Women's League?
I think it starts that week?
What week?
No, I'm trying to remember when it was. It was I think it was the 20-something or whatever that they start training.
That week.
Which is that week? So there.
What I meant was the season. When's that start? End of February or something?
Remind me that Cotton On are getting a nomination in Cockwomble.
Oh,
I tell you what, Nikki, why did you just say the 12th of November or something like that?
yeah, that's right. The 31st of sometime.
And the I'm sorry, I've just lost it now. Oh, well, see, now you made me lose my thought.
I'll get it together.
Have another.
First to 4-year players start, and then the rest of them come back for basically 2 weeks before Christmas. Is that right?
Yeah, for the later ones. But a lot of the guys are already coming back and doing stuff early, which is pleasing to see.
Well, Brodie Smith came back pretty quick, smart, after the earthquake in New Zealand.
Yeah, God. Well, we've still got a few blokes in the US, and I think Jenkins is back because he's writing some articles on the 36ers, I think, for ESPN. So he seems to be galloping along all right with his journalism career.
Had a few arguments via Twitter, I noticed.
Yeah, he doesn't mind a bit of Twitter. Neither does Tommy Lynch.
Mouthy, the pair of them.
Yeah.
Oh, this was the other thing. So Sam Shaw.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's right.
That's with the players coming back. Well, that's a player that's not coming back. I wonder whether that announcement occurred that he came into the club to do some pre-season testing and try-out training, and obviously it just did not go well.
Well, that's got to be right, Nikki, because the way when we delisted our players, there was no way in the world we wanted to take draft pick 397 or whatever we're going to get now for Shaw. We thought we had finished in terms of our, we were going to say recruiting. There was no recruiting, but in terms of our delisting. So, as you said, what the hell is that?
Is that a child phoenix?
That is my cat, who gave birth to kittens 4 weeks ago and who is now on heat before I've had a chance to get the damn thing desexed. And if my son's listening, thanks very much, because it's actually his cat.
Well, actually, it sounds like it wants to get pregnant again by the sound of it.
Well, for once, my cats are better behaved than yours.
It would have a crack at the filing cabinet at the moment. It is going that hard. Driving me crazy. So apologies for that. It's an interesting noise.
Yeah, it was.
It is a good noise.
I was going to try and get back together. But coming back to Shaw. Somebody else take over, please.
Well, why I think the break and why it occurred was that there would have been, even though he hadn't played, there's still that AFL mandate, the AFLPA mandated break they've got to have before they're actually they're not allowed back into the club.
Yeah,
and I think because he'd had that other time off, he'd started to come back to training, was what I'd heard, and he was getting through actually a few training sessions, and before symptoms would arise, and he actually hadn't been doing too badly. He was doing a lot better than he had previously. Obviously, he's come into the club. They've done some further testing once that little mandated break, so it didn't go well, and then I think he had to have a sit down with the doc.
Yeah, it's
and
very disappointing for the poor lad.
Yeah, for the good of his future, that's a really disappointing way to end, because those couple of games I saw him at the start of the year when he came back, this was the player we'd been told about. His kicking was fine. It was actually really good.
Yeah,
and everything else that he had
very
was still
disappointing.
There.
Yep, disappointing because, like you said, Nicky, it looked like he'd put his game completely together, and if the concussion situation hadn't come up, I think he might have ended up having a very good AFL career. But sadly for him, he won't have that career, but more than that, he may suffer from headaches, etc., for the rest of his life as a result of this concussion. I would think that this will certainly be an insurance claim situation, a compensation situation.
How can it be, Mackay?
Well, because
if you have a medical retirement, which is what his is, there is payments that kick in under the AFLPA. So I'd say that's what's going to happen. That could also be why it was delayed a bit as well, so that those would kick in possibly for next year.
No, I think you've got to summed it up very well, and that's another reason why it may well be delayed, to make sure that he gets that. Because if he'd done it off his own bat, well, then he may not have got it. But,
yeah, that's true.
But going through the doctors and being ruled out under the AFL system, well, then he will get compensation. And I don't know whether it's a lot of money or a little bit of money or what it is, but he will get whatever it is. The other question is, what does that mean in terms of us for a draft pick? What number is it?
It's in the 80s, isn't it?
Or is it a elevation?
Is it a what?
Oh, it could be an elevation.
A rookie elevation.
Well, we need to use a pick, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I would be highly surprised if we went to the draft with that pick. I think you're right, Nikki. It'll be an elevation. John O'Beach seems to be the one that they would put up.
I got Greenwood would be mine.
I think he's not quite ready yet, but we've actually got three good ones there. I think with Greenwood and Keith, they need a full pre-season.
Yeah, not forgetting that they can still move them up. Macca anyway. I think Beach is the one because of his versatility.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, well, obviously he may well be.
And Ogilvy is very strong on him. But he's also Greenwood's one of his little picks too.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind betting that Greenwood, if he continues on with the form that he showed last year and continues to improve, and there's an opportunity, I think he'll be the next in line during the season sometime next year to get an elevation. At least, if someone goes on the LCI or something like that.
I'd be very surprised if he didn't play a game next year.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Well, that's my statement. We'll see you in 12 months' time whether I'm right or not. I'm not.
Mate, you're talking about a club who played Scotty Thompson for 20 games.
Are you putting Stiffy's left one on that again?
What was that, Nikki?
Are you putting Stiffy's left one on that?
I bet Stiffy's left one on anything. I don't care what happens to it.
Like I said, Mackie, you're talking about a club who were loath to make selection changes, let alone try any, poor old Harry Wigg didn't get a run, and now you're saying that they're going to bring Greenwood in next year. Good luck with that.
I love the way that guy plays.
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with it. The selection policy is going to have to do a 360-degree backflip, if that's possible, which I don't think it is.
Well, maybe Brett Burton with...
Or Pike. Or Pike, who was kind of in a holding pattern for this year, just learning the lay of the land. It'll be interesting to see what does happen next year. If it is same old, then I think we definitely have a lot of questions to raise pointedly.
I think it's a really good point, Nikki, and there's a couple of people on the block in that regard. Pikey definitely. I mean, I think all of us are hoping that he was just a wait-and-see coach last year and letting the dust settle and easing his way in. But the proof will certainly be in the pudding on selection, within the first 10 rounds or so. And also people go on about Burton doing such a good job with our fitness program. Well, my rule of thumb is that you judge a fitness guy by his second year because a lot of your results are on the back of the previous guy. So our injury count in relation to soft tissues and whatnot will be interesting in our overall fitness to see if I think that'll be the measure of whether Bird actually had a good program in place, and hopefully the bloke that's come up underneath him can continue that on.
Well, he's a guy that Birdman's worked with in Brisbane. He's stolen him from Brisbane and won't be the last person that Birdman will steal from Brisbane. I'll make a prediction now. Rockcliffe, I reckon, will be wearing Crows colours.
Don't start that again.
No, I reckon Rockcliffe will pick him up as a free agent at the end of next year. He and Birdman are very good mates.
Yeah, that's what's been told. So shall we see? We've nearly hit the hour mark, and we thought this was going to be a lot shorter.
Yep.
Cockwomble?
Yep. Hang on a second. I was just recovering from Rockley.
Has the cat run away with the Cockwomble?
And the bloody cat.
Bloody Rockley. I reckon Mac is a nomination now after that statement.
Underground, overground, wombling free.
Righto.
Well, the first thing I'm going to start is actually an international one. I did consider all of the US public who were eligible to voting and who didn't.
Come on, we're not a political podcast.
No, we're not a political one. We didn't get to talk about the podcast last week, but I did put it up in the thread on the board about the squirrel that stopped the play during the Green Bay game. But I would like to give a Cockwomble nomination to the guy who was attempting to catch a squirrel who'd run under the stands and was obviously on his way out of there. Then he had this big square thing and he's poking at the poor little squirrel. So he gets it for being mean to the squirrel. And
No, what about fixing...
At any stage are we going to do anything to do with AFL football in this segment,
No,
Nikki? That's all I'm asking.
Yes,
That's all
we
I'm
are.
asking.
Now,
Can I just do one more
The
that's on left
AFL.
field? No, what about Phoenix's cat? Does that get a nomination?
Lucky
she
to be
can't
alive.
help. She cannot help herself, Ginny.
It's a bit of a harlot, really.
Oh, you've got no idea. Nikki.
Oi! You're in trouble now for that one.
I've had male cats come to the back door in the last week, including the bloke that knocked her up last time, which is a bit rich, actually, him showing his face around here again.
Well, hang on. At least he's faced up to it. Most of them would have run away and never come back again.
I don't
give
see
him
any
kudos.
tins of cat food on the back door for child maintenance or anything like that. He's not owning up to anything.
Was he asking for permission, was he?
I'll tell you what, he's lucky he can run fast.
Oh, that is hilarious.
All right, back on it. So the AFL has to, for their stupidity regarding Watson, Whitfield, optics, the whole works there. But I'm thinking the winner has to be Cotton On for designing the women's Guernseys,
Hang on,
which
before
were
you go there.
uniformly horrible.
Nah.
Before you go there, what about Port Adelaide losing a sponsor and then announcing a sponsor that was a sponsor, but it's not only a half a sponsor now, but they're still a sponsor, but not really a sponsor?
Who's that?
And them having the dice bit regarding the Collingwood women's Guernsey,
Yeah,
because that was just
funny.
hilarious.
Someone at Collingwood needs see that cancels out for Cotton On because someone at Cotton On's got a damn good sense of humour to come up with that.
In that respect, yeah,
But
without
Port-
the bar across the top, so it's not Port.
Port lost Energy Australia, Mackay, and then Energy Australia decided to continue their sponsorship of the Indigenous program that they've got. And then Port actually sign up the Indigenous program as a sponsor or something like that? Isn't that how it went around? I think it's something like that.
I saw that lost one. Didn't realise it'd come back in again on a minor scale.
Yeah, it's something like that. I didn't take that. It was funny.
No, that's pretty cockwombly.
What about Jenny on the boards pointing out the yellow underboob? I think that's a little bit cockwombly, to be honest with you.
No, she's probably right. The colours, it's horrible. I think because Cotton On are actually a sponsor of Geelong, and we know that people from Geelong don't like us very much, that I think it was a chance for those Geelong supporters to go, let's make Adelaide look as bad as we possibly can. How could we stuff up 3 stripes?
Here's another question for you, Nick, and I know this, like, cockwomble and all the rest of it, but why is it that the Women's League have a different Guernsey sponsor to the rest of the clubs? Like, why wouldn't our women's team be clothed by BLK? Like, what's the deal with that?
Because the AFL's running up.
Yeah, but the AFL run the whole thing. Do we actually own this team, or are they just? Do we have a license for a women's team to play under our colours? Like, what's the deal there?
We have a licence from the AFL that have provided a stipulation who got money from Cotton On, and the VFL is trying to help save Geelong, and Cotton On's one of the few companies that are left in Geelong.
Right.
Either that or if Geelong's list management keeps going the way they are, they can get sponsored by the NDIS, don't they? Have an administration call centre down there, National Disability Insurance Scheme.
But I think that's leaving, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
And besides Dangerfield saying that Geelong is heaven and all the rest of it, it's got a massive unemployment rate, so that's probably right. They probably are trying to throw a bit of business down that way to keep them going.
I just found it a bit rude that the club has a Guernsey sponsor. I found it a bit rude that we all have to toe the party line on the women's Guernsey, and they certainly stuffed it up.
Well, if you actually look at the colours of, as was pointed out to me tonight, the Western Bulldogs, even that Guernsey, the colours are wrong. Our colours are wrong. Their colours are wrong. We looked at, what was it, Fremantle go, why are they pink?
Yeah, why have they got a pink stripe there? That's specifically anti what the whole league is all about? Stereotypes and all the rest of it. Oh, we'll give them a pink stripe. Come on now.
Oh, you remember when I went to town regarding the women's logo and the salmon?
Yeah.
Nikki, isn't it still belong to...
Which is not a colour that looks on anyone.
Don't, Nick.
I've had to wear it as a bridesmaid. I was not happy. I have severe issues with salmon. It knows what it did.
Well, isn't that still part of the AFL's problem?
I think it's... I have to stop Phoenix giggling a lot. We'll just let him giggle in the background. The issue is that Cotton On came on as a major sponsor, and I bet you this was part of their push because they're providing the Geelong Guernsey as well. So obviously Cotton On are trying to have a new market in terms of coming in this way, and they're getting a foot in the door. The only problem is everybody's looking at it going, geez, you guys are shit.
Yeah, rubbish. Are they actually made of cotton, these stupid Guernseys? They even look like netball Guernseys. I understand that a female body would probably lend itself to a different cut, like a different.
They are cut. They are cut properly for women.
Yeah, and that's cool. I can understand that, but they still look like netball Guernseys to me.
Yeah, but they're playing in summer though. Don't forget that it's going to be hot.
Yeah, and lycra is not fun.
Oh, I don't really care.
It does not breathe well. As somebody who used to have to wear lycra as part of gymnastics, it does not breathe well.
I think we're done. Are we done?
Yeah, because you're losing it, aren't you?
I can't. I'm just stuck on the women's logo now and that whole thing.
Who's the winner? Who's the winner?
Phoenix's cat.
All right, Charlie the cat.
I reckon Port.
Oh,
No,
yeah, Port.
I do like Port. Port deserve it for their stupidity this week. That was so very cockwombly.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Nikki, that'll do.
Very good. All right, well...
Because that has to give us a bit of a laugh as well.
Shush. Speaking of laughs, I've had too much laughing, so I'm going to go now. But thanks very much for listening to us tonight. We'll be back next week, hopefully, with a pre-draft edition of Tuesday Night Live. We've been promising that for a couple of weeks now, but hopefully we get it together before the actual draft happens. And
It'll be much good after.
No, well, hindsight's a beautiful thing, Mackay. But yeah, we'll have Skipos and Corey and Pete will be back, and we may have American Crow to talk a bit of NFL and NBA, even though the Steelers are rubbish. So who cares about
Denver,
the NFL?
extra 2 points, awesome.
Nobody cares. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, check out Crows Fan Central. Someone might get around to writing an article soon. There's a couple in the wind, and we'll have a couple of lead-ups to the draft and beyond that. And in the meantime, stay safe, and thanks for listening, guys. See you later.
Yeah, bye all.
See ya.